Oh, we're in the thick of the chaos now. We are in chapter 17, and we are doing a walkthrough study of the Hebrew Cochin Revelation, the scroll of mysteries that John wrote from Patmos. This is a Hebrew version. And we're doing a walkthrough study, taking it piece by piece, trying to discover what's in this manuscript. And we're giving it out to you for free. We want to spread the truth. Please help us be a part of this. Please subscribe, like, and add comments and share this out with all of your friends. I am Brian Scott Williams of Project Truth Ministries. My co-pilot on this awesome study is Janice Baca. Janice, can you say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit more about what we're facing in this chapter?
Absolutely, Brian. We have some pretty exciting things going on in this chapter. Let me tell you, we've got some more mysteries, some secrets coming out. And you would think that we've already revealed enough of those secrets, right? But no, we've got a woman and a beast, but are they who they really say they are? I don't know. I think there's a little bit of confusion going on. But we're going to reveal those things to you. And it's so wonderful to have all of you with us today. But don't forget, you can go to projecttruthministries.org. You can download your own copy of the Scroll of Mysteries, as well as the chapters that we have already completed of the Cochin Matthew. So don't forget to get those, download your own copy, and hey, join us in this study. You will not regret it. This is some pretty exciting stuff. So, hey, Brian, let's move forward and see
Yeah,
what these secrets are, these mysteries.
absolutely. We're going to unpack this chapter, maybe reveal some of the symbolisms and some of the mysteries. Even I know there's a secret in here too. Maybe we can get to the bottom of that. Uh, with that being said, let's go on to the reading for chapter 17. And now the reading for chapter 17. Then one of the seven messengers had one of the seven bowls, came and spoke to me, and said, Come, and I will show you the judgments of the great harlot who sits upon many waters. The kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and they became intoxicated by her wine. Then he brought me into the wilderness, and I saw the woman sitting on the beast, whose appearance was like the appearance of lilies, and was full of slanderous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was clothed in red garments with the appearance of lilies, and on her was a great exceeding gold with precious stones and pearls. A golden cup full of impurities was in her hand, and written on her forehead was the name of the mystery of the great city, Babel, the mother of harlots, and the defiled of the earth. And I saw that woman drank the blood of the holy ones and the blood of the congregation of Yeshua. I had great astonishment when I saw her. And the messenger said to me, Why are you astonished? I want to tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast which she sat upon. He has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and was not, and it will come once more from the deep and will go to Sheol. The people of the earth will be amazed at it when they see the beast that was and is not, even though it is. And here is the matter that requires intellect, wisdom, and understanding. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains that the woman dwells upon. They are the 7 kings. But 5 of these fell, and one is, and the second is not yet. But when he comes, they must be for a short time, and the beast that is not is the 8th, for he was one of the 7, but went to Sheol. And the 10 horns that you saw were 10 kings who have not yet received their kingdoms. But they will rule as kings with the beast for a short time, and they have one purpose, and they will give their power and strength to the beast. And they will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will prevail over them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him are the chosen and the faithful. And he said to me, the waters where the harlot lives that I saw are peoples, corporations, and nations. And the 10 horns that you saw on the beast will hate the harlot and will make a wasteland of her and eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For Jehovah allowed their hearts to do his will, to give her riches to the beast until she is devastated by the words of Jehovah. And the woman that you saw is the great city and the kings over all the kings of the earth. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that manuscript that you're looking at is chapter 17 in the Cochin. And before we get started with verse 1, I just want to read this Bible verse. I think it's just appropriate to keep in mind with the beast and the woman. It's Proverbs 16, verse 18. And it says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And so, if you want to be blessed by God, you need to humble yourself. And only the wicked are the ones that are prideful and puffed up. And so you can't, I mean, you can clearly see that with the beast and the woman here. So keep that in mind. They are extremely wicked, and they're going to get what they deserve. All right, now let's read verse 1. It says, then one of the 7 messengers had one of the 7 bowls, came and spoke to me. And he said, come, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits upon many waters. Well, we have very similar sentence structures to what you find in the King James and the English.
We do. We do, but we do have the difference between bowls and cups. In the Murdoch Aramaic, it does have cups, which is kind of unusual. Well, let's just compare it to the Crawford Aramaic and see what they have. Do they have bowls or cups? I think we've looked at this before, but it would be good to compare it in this chapter.
Sure. And this is something that we discussed in chapter 16. And, the King James does the same thing again. It says vials, which is, very different from a cup or bowl. But here in the Crawford, we see bowls/vessels.
Okay, so I guess it can still be that they match one another. And is it too terribly different than bowls? Probably not. I wouldn't draw too much attention to this difference. It could all be one and the same, a bowl or a cup. It's a vessel. It's something that is containing something. But I just thought it was interesting to point out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in ancient times, they would also often drink out of bowls too. So, but
point.
there's a unique word for a cup, and that's not being used there. All right, moving on to verse 2, it says, the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and they became intoxicated by her wine.
So we have the footnote for the kings. I think there's always the discussion whether this is kings or angels or messengers, whether it's melech kings or melachim kings or malak for messenger or malachim. And so we put a footnote here to identify this is now actually meaning kings, sovereigns, rulers. And so that's what you see there with that footnote.
I do see a number of differences with the English. We have some added words, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I just want to point out before we jump into it that word that's being used for fornication, it's related to prostitution, but it's also where in the Greek we get the word pornography. The Greek word is porneia. And so that's letting you know what type of fornication it is. It's sexual in nature. But direct relations is what's happening here with the woman and all the nations around the earth, all the rulers slash kings, sovereigns, whichever one you want to have there. And you could translate her wine, that would be something that she makes or sells, and people are heavily tied into the relations with her. So you can kind of translate that however you want. Maybe they're selling their wickedness around the world.
It
Good.
does seem like that she's producing something that they're interacting with for becoming intoxicated by her wine. Now, is it truly something that she's selling? I don't know. It's I never thought about that before, Brian, but what is she producing? And as far as the fornication, the pornography, well, that's just rampant today. No one even bats an eye of the pornography that goes on today on television for the world to see. And so no one is disgusted by the things of the television. That's the reason why we don't even watch television at all, other than some videos that we may see out there, but we don't watch television because of the disgusting things that are on public television. And so is this what it's referring to? Is she's managed to produce this, but like she's not just producing this poison toxic wine, she's increasing the production of that. She's reaching every avenue, every possible platform there is out there. And you can't even look on your phone without getting an advertisement of some kind of pornography related to what your interests are. And so it's just absolutely repulsive. So we see this today. And I think that's probably part of what the kings of the earth are interacting with. But I think they're participating and they're actually encouraging it.
Yeah, they're enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why would it be wine, right? That's something you drink, something you enjoy, party with,
Mm-hmm.
that type of symbolism. Wine tastes good too. Now let's go ahead and look at some King James comparison.
Sure.
All right, in the King James, we have with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So in this English version, King James, you have the inhabitants of the earth. That is different. That's kind of like an interpretation. Well, all the kings of the earth, you technically are stating twice. You're stating the earth and then the inhabitants of the earth. So it's like expanding out a little bit more. And then also you have with the wine of her fornication, that being also added in. So this is just some minor additions, but they still deliver the same message. Just seems
Mm-hmm.
like there's a little extra oomph, saying
Yeah,
the
it
inhabitants.
looks, I think you're right, Brian. I think the King James is trying to explain things and give more details of what they presume it to be. Though you and I agree that we like more precise um, information, not to add any additional information. So
Mhm.
we like more of the original text that was there in the beginning.
Yeah, we like to be more like a katana sword, straight to the point.
Exactly.
Pun intended.
Pun intended. That's right.
All right, moving on to verse 3, it says, Then he brought me into the wilderness, and I saw the woman sitting on the beast, whose appearance was like the appearance of lilies, and was full of slanderous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
Brian, this is where things get pretty interesting in the grammar from this point forward. And we'll go into more of that shortly. But there's more than meets the eye here in this particular verse. You've got the woman and you have the beast, and both of those are feminine nouns. And I'll just leave that for now. But
Mm.
it's going to be pretty interesting when you hear about my thoughts on those.
Oh, that's a
So
good little teaser there. Oh, they're both
it is.
feminine form?
They are both feminine form.
Oh,
That is
okay.
correct.
All right. Janice, can I explain the lilies part?
Oh,
for the
please do.
audience. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I went on a little rabbit trail learning about flowers.
Oh, good.
And and if you look at our Hebrew Cochin, and in the Cochin it says Shoshanim, and that means lilies. But this is not the only place where we are getting this reference to lilies. This actually is in another place in the New Testament. We have Matthew chapter 6, verse 28, and Luke chapter 12, verse 27. They both reference the lilies of the field. And, I spent some time trying to figure out, okay, what flowers grew in Israel, what flowers grew in the Galilee, what was there, what could John be exposed to in his time period, and what would he call lilies? Turns out there's historical information that we need to know to find out that this technically is not even a lily by the means of what we call lilies today. In fact, they were not lilies, they were what you would call scarlet poppies. They were very common and they grew in the fields. And the Hebrew way of referencing them is they called them lilies, but by our modern flower standards, they weren't called lilies. So now we can use this to get a new understanding of what her appearance was like. Her appearance was like scarlet poppies. And so I'll put an image up there on the screen of these flowers. But when you do that, you see that they are a type of red. And putting that in the verse, these are these scarlet poppies that are red. And when you put it into the sentence, and then you look at what the English did, the English, King James, let's go flip to the King James. There's something here that explains, like, oh, that's why they translated it the way that they did. So notice it says halfway through, it, it says, and I saw a woman sitting upon a
Yeah.
scarlet colored beast. Oh, now it's a red beast. But I thought her outfit and her appearance is the scarlet. So we have a change in colors here and a change in focus of colors. Which one is
Which
scarlet?
one's Scarlet? The woman or the beast?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And perhaps, going by the flower, maybe her outfit is is red. Maybe that's the dress, or maybe there's some kind of radiant color coming from her or whatnot. But there is some information on what scarlet means and what red and what colors denote what meanings. And this will be more important when we get to verse 4. It'll really jump out to you and how they translate it.
But what's interesting about this, Brian, is that this is supposedly a beautiful appearance or something that is pleasant to look at, wouldn't you say? Because this is being described as an appearance of lilies, even though they may be like a scarlet type of lilies. It's something that isn't hideous, right? It's not something that is ugly to look at. It's actually pleasant and possibly very appealing and enticing, which is something that I should mention that we should all be very, very cautious of, because I think in this day, people are pretty naive and too trusting. And I think we need to be cautious of what we see with our eyes
Mm-hmm.
and believe, because we cannot believe everything that we see. We must question everything and actually do a comparison to the events going on, to the scriptures, and to see, is this something that is an attempt to deceive the people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or to lure them in with
Mm,
this beautiful fornication machine
mm-hmm,
that we're calling a female, a
mm-hmm.
harlot. And, before we move on to the next verse, I just want to toss out, notice at the end it says 7 heads and 10 horns. Is this 7 empires and 10 kings? Is this 7 regions and 10 kings? We know from earlier verses that one of them will be the Antichrist,
Mm.
but we'll probably tackle that a little bit later. But just something to chew on while we're moving along to the next verse.
That's a good point. Yes, let's move along.
All right. That brings us to verse 4. It says, "And the woman was clothed in red garments with the appearance of lilies, and on her was a great exceeding gold with precious stones and pearls. A gold cup full of impurities was in her hand." And again, we have the appearance of lilies, which we just talked about, that it is most likely in the time period for John, scarlet poppies that they referred to as lilies. But while we're tackling that, I just want to say, scarlet represents sin in a lot of places. It represents bad, flesh. And so, if you notice in the English, they say dress in purple and scarlet. And so remember back in some of our earlier chapters, we tackled this issue of purple and red being in the gospels. But here, our version is being clear. It's red garments with the appearance of lilies, red and red, which is a scarlet poppy. Whereas the English brings in this purple. Where did the purple come from?
That's a good point. Where did it come from?
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from because the flowers in that time period were not purple.
So, what does Murdoch Aramaic have? So, Brian, take notice that even the Aramaic, the Murdoch Aramaic, has purple and the scarlet colors, which is interesting. So, you do see that it's matching the Greek. And the question I have is, what does the Crawford Aramaic have? Does it have the purple and scarlet or red?
Yeah,
Or does it have red and red?
let's check that out.
Okay, so we've got purple and scarlet,
Scarlet,
crimson.
purple and
So
scarlet right there
we
in the
do.
Crawford.
We have purple, violet, and scarlet. So it does match the Greek, which is again, as we've already validated that this is mostly a translation from the Greek, but of course we'll continue to do that analysis. But I find that interesting.
Yeah, and to me, thinking about colors and symbols, it seems a little contradicting to have purple and scarlet in there
Mm,
together, because purple is a sign of royalty,
it is.
and scarlet is a sign typically of sin and flesh and bad things. And so, I, unless that's the message that was supposed to be delivered through the Greek, is that the woman is a walking irony, contradicting,
Hmm.
or if the Cochin had it right and these just got off over time because they didn't understand flowers and colors and stuff.
And that's a possibility because we are looking at a copy of a copy of a copy. And so we don't know what happened over time
Mhm.
or if there were spelling errors or if there were marginal notes that were included. And so these are things that we just, unless we go back in time, we wouldn't really know what happened and why such a big difference between the Greek and the Aramaic and of course the scroll of mysteries.
Yep. Looking at the description, well, this makes sense. A woman, usually is depicted with flowers or wearing flowers, carrying flowers. Women are associated with flowers, gold and precious stones and pearls. That made up. That's a good sign of wealth. I
Yes.
guess we can pull some symbols from that this woman is dressed beautifully and covered in jewels and
Mm.
wealth.
And prosperous with
Yeah, and we'll
whatever she's doing.
right, and we'll kind of see that with some of the wealth that's transferred over to the beast from the
Mm,
woman.
that's a good point.
And before we move on, there's two more things I want to point out. One is we're going to compare Cochin versus the King James, but looking at this woman, this is the woman that's wicked and evil and riding the beast, but there is a mirroring of Revelations 12. We have the righteous woman, and now in Revelation 17 we have the evil woman. So again, I like to point out these mirrorings or these mimickings.
That's a good point, Brian.
All right, let's look at King James right before we move on.
Okay.
I noticed something at the very end of this verse. It says abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And this is just something that's not in the Cochin. We don't have this ending part of that sentence structure.
Now we found that the King James really likes to add a little pizzazz to their translation, which is very unfortunate. I don't know why we really don't have more of an integrity for translations from the King James. It's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brian, before we move on, I do want to say that I'll go over some of these statements, these tags that we have in the interlinear table. So I will be doing a short presentation over these things and to why these things are important, such as these wrong pronouns. We'll get into that in a moment, Brian. I'm going to show the people something that we really need to ponder about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, moving on to verse 5. It says, and written on her forehead was the name of the mystery of the great city, Babel, the mother of harlots and the defiled of the earth. Oh, I see in
And
the English it's all caps. Even King James put it in all caps.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But I do find it also interesting that she's got this written on her forehead, whereas on Jehovah's side, he's got his name written on the 144,000 foreheads. She is just the complete opposite of what is righteous. She is just disgusting, filthy, and full of perversions.
Mm-hmm.
So she will find a way and she will make herself enticing and almost irresistible, it seems, that people will fall for her atrocities, which is what it's all about. Because if you're presenting something that you want everyone to partake in, especially the kings of the earth, then it's got to be something that seems to be pleasant. Like you said earlier, it's like wine tastes good, and people like things that are pleasant tasting and appealing, and that's exactly what she's presenting herself as, is something that is pleasant and unfortunately tasty, if you want to think about it like that. But she's a disgusting perversion.
Yeah. I just find it interesting. We got the name of the mystery of the great city, and then it says
Mm,
Babel, but we can draw the information from Babel. Babel was also Babylon or Tower of Babel,
mm-hmm.
and the mystery of the name. What is the name? What name is he talking about here? And then it goes on to give a title, and her title is the mother of harlots and the defiled of the earth. So the title is all the wickedness, really, of the earth.
Absolutely. She wears it. She wears it
Mhm.
on her forehead. She wants it
Yeah.
all to be seen. And it's a taunting to Jehovah. It's a taunting to the those that are righteous of the earth. It's a taunting and it's a mockery.
Hmm.
It's a disgusting mockery.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm thinking about Cain here. Cain was marked on his forehead for
Mm,
the wicked thing that he did.
mm,
It's almost like this harlot's gonna be marked too, but she's gonna
good
celebrate
point.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good point, Brian. I really
Thanks.
thought about it with Cain.
Mhm. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just jump in with a history moment here because I'm a madman. I decided to go on a history hunt of looking at all the early church fathers and what were their thoughts on who the great harlot of Revelation 17 might be. The first one we have is Tertullian. He associated the harlot with Rome, interpreting it as a symbol of corruption and idolatry. Irenaeus, he associated the harlot with apostate communities that had turned away from the one true faith. Hippolytus, he viewed the harlot as a symbol of false religions and spiritual corruption. And then here are a few other ones. Victorianus of Petau, he linked the harlot to the Roman Empire, emphasizing the decadence and persecution of Christians. John Wesley, identified the harlot as the Roman Catholic Church, emphasizing their role in spiritual corruption. Martin Luther viewed the harlot as a symbol of the papacy, critiquing its practices and influence. John Calvin interpreted the harlot as representing false religious systems that leads believers astray. John Knox, he identified the harlot with the Roman Catholic Church. Charles Sturgeon viewed the harlot as a symbol of spiritual adultery and false religious systems. John Edwards interpreted the harlot as representing worldly corruption and opposing the true Christianity. So, one of the things I just wanted to point out by going to these earlier church fathers and pointing out what they viewed the harlot is that they are viewing it through the lens of their time. They're looking around, they're seeing the Roman Catholic Church, they're seeing corruption in religion systems or Christianity, and they are drawing conclusions. And that's perfectly normal. And we probably are doing the same here. It just depends on, do you believe that you're in end times or approaching, close to approaching end times? These early guys, they thought that the end times was right around the corner. And so that's why they are viewing it through their historical time period. And we're just as guilty as them. Just, you know, we have to look at all possible scenarios. Maybe one of them that they pointed out is going to be the one. But we also, got to look at the best candidate and weigh all the options, but also keep our eyes open because we just want to follow the truth and we want to figure it out as soon as possible, but we don't know the future. So thought that'd be fun to share that. All right, moving on to verse 6, in which it says, "And I saw that the woman drank the blood of the holy ones and the blood of the congregations of Yeshua. I had a great astonishment when I saw her." I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, she's drinking the blood of the set apart ones, the holy ones, the saints. And maybe she's been doing this all throughout tribulation, but she's really owning this action. And this makes me think of jihad. This makes me think of what Islam does when it declares jihad on the non-believers. And this is something that's actually very striking for today.
Mm,
We just lost Syria. Syria is being taken over by a bunch of terrorists,
that's
and
right.
they are now killing Alawite Muslims and they're killing Christians,
Mm.
and it's in the tens of thousands, and they are even crucifying Christians like they did in the first century with Yeshua.
And they drink their blood too, right, Brian, as a
Yeah,
mockery. It's
yeah, they're
that's
just
disgusting.
they're just doing terrible, terrible acts. And the Western world is kind of being kind of laissez-faire, not really paying attention, but it's going to grow and it's going to grow and then it's going to encroach into Israel, which, I'm thinking, this is in the same vein of tribulation and this woman. And so something needs to be done about it because the leader of this new force in Syria, he's former Al Qaeda. I mean, this guy is a terrorist
Hmm.
and he's being welcomed onto the stage of all the key rulers around the planet. It's really disgusting and terrible to see. And they're attacking him and saying convert or die. So this is another jihad, another establishment of them trying to set up a caliphate, which makes me
Right,
think of end times.
right. And that's
And
exactly what it
mhm,
appears is going to happen all over the world because this is the reason why they're settling all over the world. These radical Islamists that are preparing themselves to do this attack upon all those that are Christians, Messianics, and the like. Anyone that is not Muslim.
yeah, yep. I don't
Dangerous
know.
times.
Yeah, I don't know how it's gonna play out, but I will say this: I remember, learning about the Antichrist, and he's also referenced as the Assyrian.
Oh wow,
So
interesting.
yeah, I'm always looking in Syria and looking in Babylon for an Antichrist figurehead to pop up. And so, but anyways, I'll say this: the Torah speaks against drinking of blood, and so this is like kind of a opposite end that they're drinking the blood.
Absolutely, it is.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, Brian, before we move on,
Hmm.
I would like to talk a little bit about the previous verses and give a little bit of a short presentation of what we've got going on, if you don't
Sure.
mind.
Absolutely.
So, we have something that actually was kind of ironic, funny, if you will, when I first started reading in Revelation 17 in the Hebrew. And I came across these verses where we have a lot of gender problems. The nouns and the verbs must match, the adjectives must match the nouns and so forth in gender, number, and definiteness. And so when you're reading this, you consider all of these things, but we have a great deal of errors that are in Revelation 17, more so pronounced in Revelation 17 than I've seen in any other chapter. And so I do want to kind of go over what I found in this and the irony of the first time that I read Revelation 17 in Hebrew and my very first interpretation of those verses when I read them, because this is truly an error, a comedy of errors from the scribe, or it could be it's intentional. We don't know where these errors came from. We don't have any history on that. But I do find that it is ironic that it may actually be pertaining to things going on today. So whether or not it's intentional or not, it still seems to apply to today's events. So I'm going to do this presentation and let me go through a few verses with you on Revelation 17. So we're looking at, of course, the image for Revelation 17, and that's what it appears as. And we'll go ahead and go down to the next verse, and I'll show you something there. Now, in Revelation 17, verse 7, the writer says that there's a mystery coming. So let me read that to you. And the messenger said to me, "Why are you astonished? I want to tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast, which she sat upon. He has 7 heads and 10 horns." So starting at verse 3 and on, we start having some problems. And verse 8 on, there is a description of what the mysteries are that's described. And so it seems to be when you come across Revelation 17:7, that from this point forward, there's going to be a description of what the mysteries are, right? But we already see a problem in Revelation 17:7. But I'm going to go to the next verse so that you can see it more clearly, that what I've already translated, at least in this PowerPoint, in more detail. So in Revelation 17:3, I am going to read it literally as it says in the Hebrew. Then he brought me into the wilderness, and I saw the woman. I'm going to stop there at woman. We know that the woman is feminine gender, right? A woman is feminine gender, noun, feminine. And then she's sitting on the beast, which is also a feminine gender noun. But here's where it gets to be interesting. His appearance was like the appearance of lilies, and he was full of slanderous names, he having 7 heads and 10 horns. You can see all throughout there in the interlinear table, we have a gender problem. The verb does not match the noun as it should. It does not, the adjectives don't match. Nothing seems to be in accordance of the way it should be grammatically. So if you were to read this literally, this is what you would get from the Hebrew reading.
So Janice, you're telling me we have mysteries in the scroll of mysteries in the grammar.
We do. But believe it or not, this is not the only place where you have more mysteries in the grammar. There's so much mysteries in the grammar that it just seems to fit for today. And You
Oh,
know,
do tell.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
So let me read this one, Brian. And the woman, he was clothed in masculine singular clothing, in red garments with the appearance of lilies. And on her was a great exceeding gold with precious stones and pearls. A golden cup full of impurities was in her hand. Now, if it was she was clothed, then it would read different. So it would read like this: Vahaisha hayata levusha. Okay, so it would read differently if it were she was clothed, but we don't have that. We have the woman, he was clothed in this masculine singular clothing. Okay, so I do have one more verse to look at, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. Verse 17:6, it says, and I saw that the woman, he drank the blood of the holy ones and the blood of the congregations of Yeshua. I had great astonishment when I saw her. So there's clearly a problem grammatically. The second half of the verse literally reads, he was an astonishment. So he was he was to me an astonishment. So here's this grammar problem we got going from she to he, or the woman to he. So here's the funny thing, Brian. When I first came across this and I see the woman, he was riding on this beast and he was dressed in masculine singular clothing. I called up my friend Kay because she and I have been trained in the Hebrew grammar for a number of years now. And so I ran this by her and I said, what are we looking at here? Because this is terrible. This is horrible grammar. And we see a lot of mistakes. We see the gender problems all over. And her initial response back to me was, she says, and Janice, it seems like there's a gender confusion to me. And it was just a box of rocks that just seemed to hit my spirit. And I said, this is a gender confusion problem. There's a gender confusion problem here in with the woman and the beast. And why this is going to be important is because later on, we're going to get to something that both the woman and the beast are involved in. And yet it still seems there's something more going on with the grammar because we've not even touched on the bigger things that's coming soon. And so whether this was intentional or not, or this is also part of the mysteries, I do think that this is something to consider as a warning for today, that in these end of days, there will be a gender confusion problem. And so perhaps this came along through the scribes. I have no idea, but it is appropriate as to what we're seeing. And I do think that this is something that I think Jehovah is showing us through this word, that this is the end days and we've got a gender confusion problem. And we certainly do. What do you
Yeah, I
think
mean,
about that, Brian?
well, I'll say today's world, the escalation of evil, you see it keep progressing. It hits new levels. And the latest new level is that people are doing, modifications to their body. They're trying to switch genders to another one. Whatever you are, they want to become the opposite. And it's really wrecking a lot of people. A lot of people are regretting it later in history, or later in time rather, but it's completely destroying them. It's causing them cancer and fertility issues. It's pure evil being sold as propaganda. Hey, this will make you happy, but it really doesn't make you happy. And this is not something new. This is what is being taught. This is new and progressive, and this is new science and, new way of evolving in humanity. But this is, through technology and science, it may appear that way, but this is not something new. This is a return back to old practices. Just like the pagan holidays that you see today, they're not coming up with new holidays and all these little traditional things that they're creating. They are reaching back in history and pulling old ideas, repackaging them, and using them again. Now, how does this apply to the gender issue? Well, in ancient times, what they would do is they would have cross dressers, which is also forbidden in Torah. You cannot cross dress, but they would have cross dressers in the pagan temples. They would have men dressed as women, women dressed as men. They would do these occult rituals with these cross dressing priest class in their temples, the pagan temples throughout history. The further back you go, the more prevalent it is. They would even use people who have been born with physical ailments and physical issues, especially regarding gender, hermaphrodites. They would be elevated and put into the priest uh, class and made as priests in the pagan temples. And they would do this even in ancient Babylon. They would make hermaphrodites the top uh, priest class and make them do the rituals. So to elevate this wicked evil thing, this not so good thing of cross dressing and all this stuff, this is a return to ancient evil Babylon. This is not something new. People think, oh, this is new and hip, and this is the way things have to progress. No, they're just repackaging evil, people. That's how it is.
I agree. And this reminds me, Brian, of Jonathan Cahn when he has in his book, I believe it's The Return of the Gods, and he talked about the gods that are coming upon America and this transgender problem we have, the gender confusion problem that we have. And he did a pretty outstanding teaching on that. I do believe that this is something that is part of that's what's being described here in Revelation 17 with this gender confusion and transgender problem, because this woman was wearing masculine singular clothing. And I think this is actually a picture of what is going on today, and that there is some kind of bigger beast being coming, because remember, we got both the beast and the woman that are feminine gender, and there's confusion for both of them for the grammar. And so I just wanted to bring that to light, because I do think that it does signify something pretty significant for these end of days. And whether it was intended or not, I do think that it's something that we should heed the warning on, because I think the Father allowed this to happen in order that we would pay attention to what's going on in these end of days.
Yeah. And, to put another point in the bucket for the United States being the harlot, well, we discovered with the investigation of the USAID, they found, US has been funding transgenderism around the world with this money that the politicians have been promoting. So we're exporting and selling our wickedness and making the US people pay for it, and they don't even want it. So that's, you can deal with that all you want, but
Absolutely.
that's what's
And
been
you're
happening.
right.
Yeah, and right now it appears it's going to get cut off, but who knows? In 4 years, is another sweep of evil going to come in and turn it right back on? I don't know. I hope not, but maybe that's a shadow picture of what the harlot might be doing, exporting all of her wickedness out to around the world and
Absolutely.
paying
And
people to do it.
I think you're right, but I don't think anything's going to get better, Brian. I think things are going to have to intensify to wake people up. It has to get downright stupid for people to say, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be at this point that people say, God, what's going on here? What's happening here in this world? None of this makes sense. And I think that's the way it should be, is we have to get uncomfortable with the nastiness and the ugliness that's coming upon this earth.
Absolutely. All right, taking us to verse 7, in which it says, "And the messenger said to me, why are you astonished? I want to tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast which she sat upon. He has 7 heads and 10 horns." So again, we keep getting this mentioning of 7 heads and 10 horns. And I think in a little bit, we'll get the explanation of what are these? What are those things? What are the 10 horns and seven
Mm.
heads?
Yeah, and to take notice that I did take liberty to add that he has 7 heads and 10 horns, just so that we could see the difference, because it's actually supposed to be a feminine gender instead of masculine. So
That's good to notice. Now, when I compare the King James I see some just slightly little differences that I think they're kind of interesting here. We have
Okay.
mysteries and we have this astonished that John is astonished at what he's looking at. But let's pop over to the King James and see it says, and the angel said unto me, wherefore dost thou marvel? Well, we have astonished, but marvel is a little different. Marvel kind of invokes like something that you like. You marvel over something beautiful or pleasant or good. That's the type of thing or something you want. I don't think marvel really is the best word to be using, but maybe there's something with the old English where marvel didn't kind of encapsulate that. I'm not really too sure, but just to me, astonish seems so different from marvel.
Well, but also take notice the way marvel is used here. Marvel is used as a verb. Astonishment in the scroll of mysteries is actually a noun. And
Ah,
so that's the reason why it had to be carefully written to create the structure of the sentence as a noun and not as a verb. So we
yeah.
do have that difference. They're using this as a verb, and of course, astonishment is a noun.
Nice. And I see it says mystery, which also lines up with ours. We have mystery as well.
Well, consider also that Sedot in Hebrew can be mysteries, can be secrets, and it can be secret counsels. And so we've chose to go with mysteries all throughout the scroll of mysteries,
Hmm.
but it could be the scroll of secrets. It could be the
Hmm.
scroll of secret counsels, right?
Yeah.
And so we chose the word mysteries.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, the scriptures 2009 goes with secret, and
Mm-hmm.
the Aramaic, you can see the Murdoch there, goes with mystery. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just back and forth. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
All right. Bringing us to verse 8. It says, the beast that you saw was and was not, and it will come once more from the deep and will go to Sheol. The people of the earth will be amazed at it when they see the beast that was and is not, even though it is. So I see a little mimicking here when I think about God's holy name. God's
Amen.
holy
Yeah,
name is he who was, he who is, and he who will be, that which
that's
will
right.
be.
That's
And
right.
so the beast here is doing the same kind of like copying here,
Mm.
that he is the one who was, now is not, and will soon to come. So just seems like their own little version of the meaning of God's holy name, but kind of like
On the
slapping
dark
a
side.
knot. Yeah, from the dark side. And then you got the reference that it's once more from the deep and will go into Sheol, the grave. So this is the opposite of life. This is death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this woman and the beast, they're all about the blaspheming and cursing of Jehovah. And so this is one of those things that they're doing, is to say um this is a way of blaspheming, and everything that is not good, they do. And so this is clearly a depiction of that.
Now, sticking with the Sheol, Sheol is the grave. We know this, and through Hebrew, it's pretty standard. Not a whole lot of fluff to it, but in the King James, let's flip over to it. I noticed it's not saying Sheol or grave, but it's saying bottomless pit. We have the bottomless pit and go into perdition. So that's definitely different. The Sheol is very specific. Bottomless pit is
It is different.
ambiguous.
Absolutely.
And to go further with the King James, I notice that this is seems to be added here, and it's added evil people. And it says whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundations of the earth. This is not something that's in the Cochin.
It isn't. And there's a lot added into this verse, which is really amazing. Now, it's not to say that the Cochin didn't ever have it. Could there have been maybe that phrase written in and it was just missed? That's a lot to miss over, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't say. We're looking at humans that are writing these or copying these, right? And so, but that's a lot to miss because we do see between the scriptures 2009 and the Murdoch Aramaic has pretty much close to what they compared each other, whereas the Cochin is very short and sweet, a very big difference.
It's tight and compact.
Absolutely.
Pretty powerful punching. Like when you say bottomless pit, well, is it a deep pit? Where's the pit? How is the pit? What is the
Right.
essence of the pit? But Sheol is very specific. We know what Sheol is: the grave, it's the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so I'm looking back, high level view. Is this sentence saying that the beast will collapse shortly and then it will try to get back up?
Sure seems that way because the beast that you saw was and was not, and it will come once more from the deep and will go to Sheol. So it was and it was not, and it will come once more. So that means it's been here before.
Like a resurrection.
That's what it seems like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's coming back and then once it comes up from the deep, so that means to say it's right now in the deep, and then it comes up again from the deep, and then we'll go to Sheol.
Mm-hmm. Maybe like John is telling us the ending of it will be in Sheol. Like it will finally
Yeah.
go to Sheol at some point. Maybe not at this point.
No, maybe not at this point because God's timing is not our timing, right? And
Mhm.
so we may get a dream like, oh yeah, any day now, but yet that's the years from now. God's timing is just entirely different than ours.
Yeah.
So, but I'm really intrigued with all of the addition to this Greek to English and the Aramaic. What does the Crawford Aramaic have? Does it have this entire phrase added
Yeah.
at the end?
Let's check it out.
It does. It
Yeah,
has
it
an entire
appears to be.
phrase. Yeah,
In the
and
book
it
of life, you
does.
can see it right there. Yeah.
You do, and it does reflect very closely now to the Greek. So, which I find again interesting. I
Yeah.
well,
Cochin stands alone again.
it does stand alone, and I love that,
Mhm.
and so it's good to compare these things. And
And
that's all I have.
let me just say, some of these Hebrew manuscripts, these revelations that are being found, because they're fine. They found quite a number of them, and a lot of them we figure quickly that they came from Greek, but then there's some that there still needs to be more research done on them. But for those, these are the types of things that need to be compared with the Cochin. So take those different manuscripts, put them up against this one, see if it contains this added portion of having the book of life in there. These are some of these markers that, kind of tells a story. And, is it that it got dropped off of copying because the copyist forgot it? Or is it that it wasn't in the original text? Well, if we find more that match it, that are promising, that could solve these types of questions that we have.
And one of the things to consider in the Scroll of Mysteries, we do have names that are in the Scroll of Mysteries that's been transliterated from another language. And the scholars that I've done research on, some of them believe that this was used as a teaching type scroll. So you'll see names like John's name is Johannos, and was that transliterated from, I don't know, Greek or anything else? Possibly, I don't know, but the rest of it has markers of the Hebrew. But a lot of times when we translate these things, we may transliterate into the language that we're used to seeing. For example, that in Matthew or the future gospels that we're translating, we may transliterate the name from Hebrew to English letters, and yet at the same time put in parentheses that we're used to seeing the name of John or Matthew or Mark or Luke, right? And so this is because that's what people are used to seeing. And
Familiar.
so that's the reason why their names are changed, is because so that people would not get confused. Because have you seen that the movie series The Chosen?
Mm.
where they use the English names, right? And people get so frustrated, like, why would you use the name of Yeshua? Because so many people know the name of Jesus. And if they did that with all of their names, then people wouldn't understand, well, who is this in the Bible? Because it's different than my English Bible. And that's the reason why names are transliterated. So just as a thought from that, and I don't know.
Yeah. And that was something that was common in ancient times. You would have a congregation that was more familiar with some usage or some sort of language, and then you could have other manuscripts that you would have as source material or training material for
Mm-hmm.
those who are going to be teachers. And they would reference back. So it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, and it was something that was common.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, that concludes our part one of chapter 17 walkthrough study of the Cochin Hebrew manuscript of Revelation. That is the scroll of mysteries. And we hope you are enjoying this walkthrough study. We hope that we're stirring up a lot of thinking. We hope we're stirring up more text criticism study in our audience members' minds and encouraging them to continue to dig and look for the truth and to try to make sense of this manuscript. There's some things in it that are really amazing and they're quite different from all the manuscripts out there. And it's really enlightening. Some of this stuff makes more sense than what we have received in the Greek and the English. And we're really excited to deliver that out to the people. And, if you could be a part of this journey of pressuring everyone out there to do interlinears and to put everything out publicly for free to the people, please help do that. We're trying to do that as well. We want the public to see everything. Everything should be translated and everything should be given out to the people because that is in step with God's will. He wants us to know the end and how it's going to play out. So he has given us this book. So praise God. With that being said, I want you to say, come on over and join us for part two. You will definitely enjoy that. We have some more big time findings in there, and you're not going to be disappointed. So, with that being said, please continue reading your Bibles. And as always, God bless.